The explosion wasn't real, at least, not in the way the neighbors first feared. It was a burst of white fire and blinding light that shot straight into the cold morning sky, a column of shimmering dust rising like a phantom. People screamed, birds scattered, car alarms wailed across the cul-de-sac, and for a moment, even time seemed to freeze. And at the center of it all stood the biker crew, men built like mountains, women with steel in their gaze, watching the spectacle with arms crossed and hearts pounding with a mixture of triumph, exhaustion, and something far deeper. Because that explosion, that flash, that blinding display, represented the breaking point of months of quiet suffering, injustice, humiliation, and restraint. It was not vengeance, it was proof. Proof to an entire neighborhood that they had endured enough. Proof that sometimes the people who look intimidating on the outside are the ones who spend the longest time turning the other cheek. Proof that even the toughest souls can be pushed until they have no choice but to make a stand, not with violence, but with clarity. And at the center of this battle, this strange war between leather and lawn chairs, chrome engines, and HOA newsletters, was a woman who had no idea what kind of storm she had stirred. They called her Karen. And she had just messed with the wrong family. Call TO action number 1, after hook. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what's right, then make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name so we can keep bringing powerful stories like this to life. The story begins. The neighborhood of Oak Willow Springs had always been painfully quiet, the kind of place where the loudest sound on a weekday evening was the rustling of sprinkler systems or the clink of dishes being washed behind thin suburban walls. People liked it that way. They moved there for peace, for sameness, for neat little lawns and mailbox gossip. And for a long time, everything stayed perfectly, uneventfully predictable until the day the Ridge Rider Biker Club moved into the long-abandoned corner property. No one expected bikers to live in a cul-de-sac surrounded by pastel houses and HOA policies stricter than federal law. They arrived with the thunder of engines, the glint of chrome, the smell of oil and leather carried by the wind like a warning. But the truth, something few bothered to discover, was that these bikers weren't troublemakers. They were veterans, mechanics, rescue volunteers, and foster parents. They were a family built of broken pieces welded together stronger than steel. They moved to Oak Willow Springs to rebuild, to breathe, and to belong. But belonging requires acceptance. And acceptance, in neighborhoods like these, must be approved by the HOA. And the HOA had a queen. Her name was Linda Carver. But the neighborhood called her Karen. From the moment the bikers arrived, Karen watched them the way hawks watch prey. Every morning she stood by her window pretending to adjust curtains while actually photographing anything she found out of place. Every evening she paced the sidewalk in athletic shoes that had never been used for actual exercise, writing imaginary violations into her clipboard. She complained about the noise, complained about the engines, complained about their clothes, their tattoos, their boots, the way they parked, the way they breathed, and especially the way their motorcycles gleamed so defiantly under the sun. Yet the bikers remained unfailingly respectful. They waved, smiled, and kept to themselves. They followed every rule, sometimes more carefully than anyone else. They were gentle giants in a land of fragile egos. But Karen didn't want them compliant. She wanted them gone. And so the sabotage began. At first, it was small. A missing valve cap here, a moved bike there. The bikers thought it was kids at first, maybe harmless mischief. But then things escalated. Handlebars were scratched. Tires mysteriously deflated. Registration tags peeled off. Someone poured soda on a polished tank, ruining the paint. Someone else, likely the same, removed spark plugs, loosened bolts, or wedged trash into exhaust pipes. Each time, the bikers just fixed the damage silently, refusing to start a fight. But each time, Karen watched with narrowed eyes and a strange, self-satisfied smirk. She believed she was winning. She believed she was protecting the neighborhood. She believed she was the hero of her own story. But she didn't know that one of her actions would cross a line that could have gotten someone seriously hurt. And that was the day everything changed. The struggle deepens. One autumn morning, two of the bikers, Brody, a former Marine medic, and Raina, the only woman in the club riding a custom matte black cruiser, were heading out early to deliver supplies to a local shelter they volunteered at. Brody mounted his bike first, turning the key, listening to the hum like a heartbeat. But the second Raina twisted the throttle on hers, she felt something off. A vibration. A wobble. Instinct saved her life. She killed the engine immediately. Brody knelt, examined the bike, and his jaw clenched until the veins in his neck bulged. The front brake line had been cut. Not damaged. Cut. Clean. Deliberate. Raina would have been dead the moment she picked up speed. For the first time, fear spread across the club like a storm cloud. Not fear for themselves, they had survived worse. But fear of what would happen if they reacted the way the world expected bikers to react. Because they knew how society judged them. They knew how the police would see leather versus pastel. They knew that making a scene might only give Karen more power. But they also knew they couldn't stay silent anymore. Yet even then, the bikers tried to handle things peacefully. They reported the incident. They documented everything. They installed cameras. They petitioned the HOA for mediation. Karen denied every accusation, played innocent, cried dramatically at meetings, and insisted she was being targeted by dangerous criminals threatening the peace of the community. She twisted the story like a seasoned politician, turning the bikers into villains in the eyes of neighbors who never bothered to learn the truth. The final straw came when the HOA threatened the bikers with fines unless they removed their motorcycles entirely from the driveway. It was a thinly veiled attempt to force them out. The bikers met that night, sitting around a table built of old engine parts, hands stained with grease and hearts heavy with frustration. They debated. They argued. They tried to find a peaceful solution. But sometimes peace must be defended, not with fists or fury, but with undeniable truth. They needed a way to show the entire neighborhood exactly what was happening. They needed a spectacle, something dramatic enough to expose the sabotage without harming anyone. And that was when Raina suggested the flash powder tanks. The plan, and the moment everything shifted. Flash powder isn't explosive in the traditional sense. It doesn't create heat waves or shrapnel. It creates light, intense, shocking, theatrical light. Harmless but impossible to ignore. Magicians use it. Stage crews use it. Special effects teams use it. The bikers, being mechanics and veterans, knew exactly how to handle it safely. They emptied 2 old motorcycle tanks, reinforced them, and filled them with a controlled amount of flash powder and air pressure. They rigged them to harmless detonation switches triggered only by direct tampering. Then they placed the decoy bikes out front, polished, perfect, irresistible to someone who couldn't resist meddling. And of course, Karen couldn't. The flash went off the moment she tried to remove a screw near the tank, likely hoping to cause another accident. The entire neighborhood witnessed it. A boom of light and shimmering dust erupted like a firework, bright enough to illuminate yards 3 houses away. Nothing burned. Nothing broke. Nothing hurt her. But she staggered back, screaming, covered in harmless silver residue that clung to her clothes and hair like glitter. Neighbors rushed out. Phones recorded. Cameras caught everything, her tools in hand, her guilt exposed, her lies shattered. For the first time, Karen wasn't in control. And for the first time, the neighborhood finally saw who the real problem was. The aftermath and the heart behind the leather. The HOA was forced to confront the truth. Karen was removed from her position. Multiple neighbors apologized to the bikers, though some did so sheepishly, still ashamed of their assumptions. But what surprised everyone most was how the bikers responded. They didn't demand punishment. They didn't seek revenge. They didn't celebrate her downfall. Instead, they asked that Karen receive counseling, support, and accountability. Raina even visited her privately, quietly, because she learned Karen was dealing with something none of them knew. The sabotage had been a twisted outlet for a woman drowning in grief after losing her husband and estranged from her only son. Her obsession with control wasn't hatred, it was fear. And while her actions were dangerous and unacceptable, her pain was real. The bikers understood pain. They recognized wounds hidden behind anger. They had lived those stories themselves. So they offered her something she never expected: forgiveness. Karen eventually apologized publicly. She paid for the damages. She even started helping the bikers with neighborhood projects, as strange a sight as it was to see her handing tools to men she once feared. The cul-de-sac didn't just return to normal. It became better. Stronger. More united. Because sometimes it takes conflict to reveal character. And sometimes the people we fear the most are the ones with the most heart. Call to action number 2, near the end. If this story touched your heart even just a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Your engagement helps us bring more emotional, powerful stories to life. Special request, comment line before ending. Before you go, comment below, do you believe people can truly change?